So hi Liz, how are you?
Hi Nash, welcome to the inaugural webinar of our weekly catch-up.
Our weekly catch-up. So both Liz and I, who work for VidVersity, I'm based in Melbourne, Liz is based in Sydney. We've done a few podcasts over the years and a few different things, and I think all roads lead to this.
Yes, I agree. So so Nat and I speak nearly every day, and because of the fast-moving nature of the environment we're working in, we've just got so many stories about what businesses are doing, what our customers are doing, what challenges people are encountering, and we talk about them together, but we just felt that they were so relevant to people and that they might be really helpful. So we obviously won't identify anyone who, we're not revealing any special information, but it's just hopefully will help people in their journey to moving their learning online in this challenging environment.
Yeah, and a bit of context, Liz and I have been building and working in the online space for over 10 years now. So we both have a background in CPD Interactive, which provided online learning for lawyers. So we've been watching this space for a really long time, and the last couple of years we've been developing and building a business at VidVersity. So that's sort of where our background is. So it's not just something we've watched at COVID, we've been watching this for a long time. So it's a lot of our learnings are sort of coming to the forefront now. So what we're going to the format will be, we're just going to tell some of these stories that we're telling each other this week. So the theme of this session is a project we've worked on in aged care, particularly with a focus on COVID, which is where we're at the moment. And it's just a really amazing story. We've both been working a bit in this, Liz, so it's an interesting space to work in.
Yes, yeah. And probably some context around this. I mean, we're going to leave these webinars up so people can kind of dive in and listen at any time. But so it'd be good to kind of, Nat, maybe build some context around what this business looked like, the healthcare business we're talking about, sort of 3 weeks ago, and where they're at now, and you know, obviously what's happened along the way, but it was very different 3 weeks ago.
So this is a team, this is an organisation that has a number of healthcare or aged care facilities in Victoria. So they deliver, they have two services. So in aged care, you have the home care, so people who come into the people's home and provide services. And then they have actual residential care, which is more what we would call a nursing home. And up until 3 weeks ago, they had a team of about 4 or 5 educators whose job was to get in the car and go to each residential place and train staff. So whether that's on wound management or the aged care standards or whatever that might be. Well, and they've really never delivered anything online, other than they've bought off-the-shelf mandatory training that they put in their learning management system. But they've never been, it's been a very face-to-face model with a little bit of mandatory training online. So that changed very quickly last week, very quickly. So they have had, well, COVID's here, and the highest risk people with COVID is older people. We know that. So, I mean, we're reading that on the news all around the world at the moment. So they became very concerned about making sure their staff were trained in PPE equipment, something called touchpoint cleaning, which is all the cleaning of everything in the organisation. So in the residential care, so that might be the buzzers, it might be the light switches and stuff. All that has traditionally been done, washing hands, people going in and teaching them. All of a sudden, they had to train a workforce of around about 800 people.
Yeah, and probably just to interrupt you, Nat, too, normally the cleaners would do this stuff, and now it's no longer just cleaners, right? So the frequency is so great that everyone needs these skills.
So there's that, and then there's the workforce. The workforce are 50% English as second language. And the interesting thing, this is not training in a big corporate where everyone sits at a computer. There's no computers. So digital literacy is a major problem, but access to computers is a problem. So last week, they got a phone call around about Monday morning to say every single person has to be retrained in hand washing, PPE and touchpoint cleaning before they can pretty much come back into the business. All the best. That's a team that have no digital capacity. They've never built anything online, And the thing they had was they had stuff that they could have delivered off the shelf, but it's not really talking to that organisation. So they might be showing you how to wash hands, but when the person goes to do it, the tap looks different. The soap is different. It's all a bit different. So in 48 hours, the team were mobilised. They did some really amazing things. They got the staff, a couple of staff members, to film themselves arriving at work, signing the stat deck that is now required, donning and doffing the equipment, the PPE equipment, filmed it all, uploaded it to VidVersity, edited it, sort of added links to the policies, handouts, checked it, delivered it in 24 hours, and 801 people did it on a mobile phone over 48 hours.
Yeah, and the tracking, so just to explain how the tracking works, an administrator in-house can check that and see what's been done.
Yeah, so they could have delivered through a learning management system and packaged it up in SCORM. They didn't have time. They didn't want to do that. That was a barrier to getting people to do things. And it wasn't about, they didn't need to have certified training. They needed to know it was done. So by sending out just a link to everybody's text, they sent it via text message. Because these are people who, half of them were at home and they had to do it in their home before they got to work. Half of these people don't even have access to computers, even in their home environment. So the tracking was just clicking over, showing who's done it and when, And this was a live tracking that then ultimately they could feed into their learning management system by downloading that as a CSV. But it was just such an amazing story for me. I felt really proud that the team quickly mobilised and got that training out across the state. And one of the things I love about it is the training's real. It's the real manager in the real residential setting showing you what they expect of their staff. So
yeah, and the one thing I think is so great about this too is that they're not stuck with it, because the process to create the video is so straightforward now with mobile phones. It doesn't need to be a big palaver to capture the video. And so if next week they realise that they've got some gaps they need to fill, they can just do it with the same turnaround time. And I just think it just must give people such a great sense of comfort that they can be developing the training to match the environment that they're moving in. And it's just changing daily. And particularly, I mean, in Victoria, in the space of a week, you went from sort of business as usual to basically lockdown again. And so being able to keep up with that with the training, I think, is such a big part of it.
Yeah, and I've spoke to them this morning, and they've done another one on putting on surgical masks properly. So they're moving really fast and just deploying these things really quickly. And as I said to them, in probably a month's time, you'll look back and go, oh gosh, we could have made things so much more polished. Yeah, you could have if you didn't have 24 hours to build this. So down the track, you might get a videographer to do a bit more of that filming and take it up to another level and put that into VidVersity and edit it and deliver it that way. But right now, it's absolutely the most effective way to train up your staff. And so they've made it that you have to have watched it before you come into the facility. So they've got this real sense of, we know everybody's being told what we expect as a business. So I think it's a fabulous way to do it. And I'm really impressed with what they've done. So they've done some really exciting stuff.
Yeah, and so I think the application, so this is the reality of our recording at home, Nat, the dog.
Yeah, well, hi, Chloe.
That's Chloe joining the webinar. So how do you think this will apply to some other similar industries? I mean, obviously healthcare's really in the firing line with COVID, and particularly aged care, because it's just so difficult for it to be contained in that environment when they're so vulnerable. But what other applications can you see for this kind of, on the go training? So create and deliver.
Well, I hope that it doesn't stop with COVID. I hope this agility to deliver really interesting content quick takes away that 6-month process of designing perfection and then keeping it there for 5 years because it costs so much time and money. I hope that training, just like in teaching in a classroom, is always evolving. So I think this can range from a high school teacher to someone who wants to train on a production line, or someone who wants to train their staff in mining. I mean, the thing that I find really exciting about this is not traditional corporate training done at a desk. This is saying we can deliver training fast, authentically, so it represents exactly our message. So it's a comms feature, really, to a really mobile workforce fast. So anyone really, I'm excited about. Hopefully, there's a new mindset to think of this as training can be engaging and interesting, but delivered continually. It's not just we have our mandatory training and it's been the same for 5 years. I think I hear that over and over because the process and the time was so expensive that they don't invest in changing it. Whereas if we make it a much more agile thing, I think who couldn't use it?
Yeah, and the other thing I think that's changed is the learners' expectations in terms of what sort of product that they have access to. So we talk about this a lot, that the most important thing to those staff members is information. So they don't need a high-end production film crew type scenario for them to get the information to them quickly. So if something changed yesterday and they need new training based on that today, then that kind of production value is not important, but it's also not needed by the learner in that instance. They just need that information. So I think that's the other thing that we're getting used to now is you've just got to look at the purpose of it. And later, if you've got time and things settle down and that's still relevant, then you can reproduce it and make it look amazing in terms of the filming quality. But right now, it's just, I need to know what I need to do when I go into to work today.
Absolutely. Just like this webinar, when you just turned into a robotic static thing, we just move on. You know, that's how but that's not the feature of our session, you know. So we've got to, I think, if anyone's got a 16-year-old or any child in their lives, they will know that they are learning how to game off someone who's 16 in a dark room who you can barely see. But it's the information that's most important. So
yeah, exactly.
And I think it's about knowing when to spend the money and when to invest in. So sometimes I think if you're doing a welcome from a CEO and an induction training, you might want to take that up a notch and spend a bit of money on it. But I just think there needs to be another layer if we can do this fast and really give the capability to organisations to create content quickly. And it's the content that's most important.
Yeah, and so maybe, just on that note, your kids in Victoria will be homeschooling again up to year 10, not year 11 and 12. But we've talked about this as well, about the pressure on teachers and the capability this kind of technology gives for teachers to pre-record content and take a little bit of pressure off the learners and also the teachers to constantly be on Zoom. So I reckon that's worth a little bit of a chat. And I'll mute Chloe in the background.
Okay. No, I really think this is a whole nother discussion about how we can deliver content that's more intense. So not your 1 hour training session or your 15-minute bullying and harassment. This is moving whole curriculums into the online space. And whether that's, so I do lecturing at Melbourne Uni and I'm about to teach next week and it's a pretty intense week. I know I can't have my students for 8 hours in Zoom for a number of reasons. One is they'll go insane. Second is I'll go insane. So we know that we can't all be online for the day. But what I think is we can dip in and out. So there's a component of any kind of workshop day, whether you're a teacher at school, there's a component where I impart information, and there's a component where we have to peer, share and learn from each other and interact. So I think there's a real case for a day that looks like 9 to 9:15. Hi everyone, welcome on Zoom. This is welcome to the day. And that can be school teachers, that can be running a day workshop on leadership, whatever that might be. For the next hour, what I want you all to do is watch these 4 videos and you give them a link to log into it. And inside the videos can be some quizzes, instructions, links to stuff, might be a case study. And at the end of the last one, it might say, now click here to come back into Zoom. It should be 11:30 and we're all going to discuss the case study. Then we come into Zoom and we start using things like Padlet, which is where we all add notebooks and notes of what we've learned for the case study. We might go to breakout rooms. We might do nothing but just chat in Zoom. We might be there for 45 minutes, then off we go again. And I think that flow is a really great way. So I don't think you can dump your world online, but I think we can have this fantastic blended hybrid approach that not only is it better mentally for everyone, I think the learning outcomes are much more effective.
Yeah, and it's it sort of speaks to what we've just been talking about with the healthcare sector, that it's just agile and you really can film it and deliver it tomorrow. And we're going to go on and talk about that model a bit more in the next webinar, which we'll record separately, because there's a lot to talk about there in terms of the stumbling blocks that people like. It sounds amazing, and we've seen the finished product with some people we've built this for, but people really get stuck on where to start, and they feel that they're not going to be able to produce that content. So we can talk a bit about that and break it down and show that it's actually quite straightforward once you get started.
Fantastic. And I just thought we should finish with a story about something that's happened to us in the week. So have you got anything off the cuff? Haven't given you any warning, but is there anything you'd like to tell me about the week?
Yeah, so I guess the big thing that I learnt this week is that really it's extremely challenging for people. And, you know, it is easy to forget, even for us, you know, we're doing this every day, and, you know, recording, having our faces here, speaking, not worrying too much about mistakes or barking dogs. We're kind of taking it in our stride now. But when I speak to people, I realise that all of these steps are really hard, particularly anyone 40 plus. And that's not everyone 40 plus, but just generationally, you know, they're not so comfortable with putting themselves on TikTok or online. So I think the big story for me this week has been just trying to help people to just take those very basic steps and to understand that they are challenging and difficult and that people need help with them, but it's worth it.
Fantastic. So our next webinar will be sort of how to get started. So thanks very much, Liz. And we hope you enjoy this, and we'll be doing this once a week, just sharing what we're learning out there, because we're in lots of different businesses and we thought it would be a nice opportunity to share what we discuss each day. We thought we'd just start sharing it with you. So thank you so much.
Yeah. No worries. And I'll just mention just the practicalities. This will be an on-demand webinar, which you can access via our website, and we'll also put it up as an audio podcast as well. So we'll share that information, but it's just sharing knowledge, making it easily accessible. You don't have to log in at a particular time. It's just going to be on demand.
Fabulous. Thank you.
See ya. Bye.